Welcome to the Fit Strong Women Over 50 podcast, episode number 177. Hi, I'm Jill. Thank you for joining us today.
And I'm Chris. Jill and I are your hosts for this podcast and the founders of the Becoming Ellie community.
You may ask, why did we decide to name our community Becoming Ellie? Well, it's because Ellie was the Norse goddess of aging who beat Thor in a wrestling match. Chris and I thought, hey, we want to be like Ellie, fit and strong as we age.
You can find out more about the Becoming Ellie community and this podcast at our website, becomingellie.com. Ellie is spelled E-L-L-I. You can also sign up for our newsletter while you're there.
Today, we're talking with Mary Newell. She has an incredible story about becoming a runner. Let's go to the podcast. Mary Newell is a 74-year-old runner who started running at 55 and never stopped. She is a mostly retired clinical psychologist. Her two passions are running and travel. She combines them as much as possible.
We were introduced to Mary by Wendy Battles, the host of Reinvention Rebels podcast. Mary's story is inspiring, and we really wanted to talk with her on the Fit Strong Women Over 50 podcast.
Welcome, Mary. We're so happy to get to talk with you.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So you're 74 years old, and you are still running. What kind of running are we talking about?
Well, I run 4 days a week. 3 of those are an hour and 15 minutes, and it's usually an easy run, an endurance run, and one with some intervals in there. And then the fourth one is a long run, which is 2 hours or more, depending upon where I am in training. Like if I'm working towards a marathon or something, then I'll add on to that long run. But most of the running is easy. It's not, going all out or anything like that. This past Sunday, 3 days ago, I ran the New York City half, which is like one of my ultimate favorite races. It's second only to the New York City Marathon in my books. They're just two amazing races in a category by themselves.
I've heard there's so many people watching from the sidelines that it's hard not to go too fast.
Well, it's the crowds are, it's like it's showtime. You feel like a rock star, particularly if you put your name on your shirt. People just scream and, hearing the crowds call your name as you're running through Times Square. Imagine that.
Yeah, yeah. It really sounds like a runner's high for sure.
Oh, definitely.
What prompted you to start running at age 55? Were you already an athlete in something else, or was it something you always wanted to give a try?
No, and well, there's a lot of answers in there. I was not an athlete, no way even close. I grew up as the kid who preferred to be inside reading than going outside to play. My mother used to have to make me get your head out of that book and get outside and don't come back until I tell you.
Oh, that was my childhood. I was absolutely the same. My mother would say, put your book away and go outside.
Yeah. And it was like, I would like try to beg. Well, I was going to do, iron the curtains or something, so I could stay inside because I was so insecure outside.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't do anything. I couldn't hit, I thought you had to hit the ball the first time it came to you and you had to hit it far. My image of what it meant to be able to play. I was afraid to climb trees. I felt safe inside. And my idea of a fun Saturday afternoon while the kids, after all the chores were done and the kids were going out to play, was I would go down to the public library and spend Saturday afternoon in the public library. And that was my heaven.
So your childhood, you were a bookworm.
Right.
That's
right.
what we used to call it. I don't know if they still call it that, a bookworm.
Yeah. And so I was not athletic, and I was always like last chosen in gym class. And part of it was the fact that I acted like I didn't care because I didn't believe I could do it. So then, I had to act like I'm not even going to try,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I wanted to be able to do those things, but I didn't believe that I could. I was afraid.
That's amazing. So what changed?
Well, well, on the other hand, I have been concerned with my weight my entire life. I mean, going back, so, I'm a child of the 50s and 60s. I remember doing Jack LaLanne.
Oh,
Oh
yeah,
my God.
Liz.
This was like when I was like in late elementary school. Back then, that was like 61, 62. But if I was home during that, because he came on during the day, if I was home for whatever and he came on, I would try to do those exercises. And so I did every kind of diet I would hear about, but I continued to gain weight. I was but I was up and down, and the clothes I was wearing, the clothes I wanted to wear, and the safety, whatever, something. I wore a lot of billowy things, so you could hide stuff, but I didn't think about after being athletic after that. But then because I was concerned with weight, I would do all these different, cardio, Jane Fonda, Richard Simmons, aerobics, step aerobics, who's that typo?
Jazzercise.
Jazzercise. I did it all, and I was still losing no matter what. And every diet, no matter how extreme, I would even get diet pills, all kinds of things, just trying
Yep.
to manage my weight. So I struggled with it all my life. And then when I got to menopause and the weight started coming on, I gotta do something. So I went to the gym, Gold's Gym, and was working out. But I would get on the treadmill. I didn't think I was a runner. I didn't think I could run because I had tried twice, probably with 10 years in between, and it was awful. And so that just confirmed to me, because I wasn't an athlete as a kid, so why did I think I could run as an adult? And then I got to the point after that second time is what I could tell you. If people said, "Do you run? Have you thought about running?" or whatever, I would argue with them about why I could not possibly run and give them the list of, I just can't do it. But anyway, so menopause was approaching. So I was doing all this cardio stuff at the gym. I would walk really fast on the treadmill, Stairmaster, recumbent bike, all of that. But I never ran. And even if I saw people around me running, I knew you could, but I wasn't one of them. And in January of 2006, I don't remember the day. And if you had told me 1 minute before I turned that knob, I would not have known I was going to do that. But I was on the treadmill walking really fast. And for some reason, I turned the dial up and started running. Literally, that is the way it happened.
Wow.
That is honestly, I did not. I don't know what got into me.
It wasn't even a conscious thing. You just did it.
Yeah, I just did it, and I was running. And, maybe, I don't know how long I ran, a minute, 2, 5, because time just kind of lost. I said, I'm running. I actually am running. I couldn't believe it. And so I kept, then I looked around to see if anybody was looking at me. I went back to running because I thought, of course, they'd go, what is she doing? It's like,
You do feel like all eyes are on you when you try something new, isn't it?
right, exactly. It's like, oh my God, they're looking at me with my flabby butt and my it was so awful. But anyway, so whatever the amount of time was left on that tread, I ran the whole time. And I think back then you were limited. They were programmed to stop at 30 minutes. And so for the rest of that day, I went to work and everything. And for the rest of that day, I just ran. That was something to me. So then I went back, did it the next day, and I kept doing that. I would just go to the gym and run on the treadmill and loved every minute of it. Then one day, this friend of mine at the gym said to me, have you ever thought about running a 5K? And I'm going or running a race. I don't know. But anyway, I'm going why is that? If you can run for 30 minutes on the treadmill, you can run a 5K. I kind of looked at him and go, huh. And then I started thinking, that could be, it's like the Facebook list, check off all the things you've done, ran a
Yeah.
5K, check, I'll do it. I can tell somebody a story about it at some point. So I said, okay, then I had to go home and find out how far a 5K was. That's how far out of athletics and everything. I did not even know how far a K was, so like 5K, and then thought, oh, that's 3.1 miles. Oh, that seems kind of far. But anyway, so I said I would do it. I told every single person everywhere. I called all my friends, family, dry cleaning person, the mailman, the people standing. But that's then I have to do it. I have, if I commit, so I tell everybody. And I convince myself that I'm going to do it. I think that's it. And I tell it so many times that I convince myself that I can actually do it. Race day, I'm up at the start of the labor. I decided to do the Labor Day road race. That was the thing I missed. And so I signed up for it. And come race day, I'm at the start going like, what am I doing here? I was so scared. Like, why did I do this? And with my little bib pinned on and everything. And what if I get lost? What if, all of the questions. Then I thought, what if I've lost my mind? What if I start running and I wander off and never come back? I'd be wandering around New Haven as the lady who went to the race and never came back. Or, I just had all kinds of horror stories. And there was this really nice woman who was a nurse. I remember that she was a nurse. And I told her it was my first time, and she talked to me, and she recommended a book that I should get called The Courage to Start. So it was okay. The race started. I took off. I didn't even think. I was just running. I just kept running, going with the crowd, and I hadn't paid attention to the finish. As we're coming, and I'm looking, is that the finish? And the reason was because I couldn't believe I had made it. I could not believe I was at the finish, and it didn't seem that long, the other thing. So I'm going, oh my God, what if it, well, maybe it's not the finish. Maybe it's around the corner. Maybe it's somewhere else. And so I'm debating as I'm running towards the finish, and I was too afraid to stop in case it wasn't the real finish. And then somebody told me I could stop. So, but, then when I realized what I had done, that was the best feeling. I mean, I have never had, I've come close, but I've never had that feeling that I had actually run a race. And it was just like, the angels were singing or something.
Yeah, you'd really feel proud of yourself, right?
Yeah. I drove from there to the Barnes and Noble, the closest Barnes and Noble, and got that book by John Bingham, The Courage to Start. I started reading it, the bookworm. I started reading it, and it was just like, if you run, you're a runner. And it was like, I became a runner that day. I became a runner Labor Day. And I had already run a race by the time I read the book. So I was legitimately in.
Wow.
But, from the time I started, I loved it. And it's who I am. And so I do it. Like I said, it's automatic 4 times a week. If I want to add another day, I can or that. But, it's just like Wednesdays, Saturdays, Sundays, and Mondays, I run. And I run early in the morning. So it's get up, get out of bed, get on the streets. And so I run every distance from a 5K. I've actually done 100-miler. I ran 100-miler,
Wow.
but that was for my 70th birthday. I had to have a plan for turning 70. And so I trained for a year. And that's it. You have to have a plan. It's like anybody can do anything if they have a plan and carry it out, of course.
How do you train to do those, to run long distances like that? Well, or even even a marathon. How do you train for long distance running?
Well, you have the base, like I was saying, I run 4 times a week. three of those are an hour and 15 minutes, and all depending upon what the goal of that run is, whether it's an endurance run or a tempo run or an intervals run, that will determine how far I go within that amount of time. But then the long run is 2 hours, period. So, and then when you start training for like a marathon, you just keep adding to the long run.
Okay.
The other runs, I mean, can stay the same, but what you want to do is be able to the endurance. You want to be able to last for
Right.
26.2 miles. So you just keep adding to the long run.
Okay.
Wow. So you ran a 100-mile race. Did you have a coach that helped you train? I mean, you didn't start out doing an hour and 15 minutes, 4 days,
No, no, what I did, and that was 2020. So, I had run a ton of marathons by then. So I'm used to running, I'm used to running 5 hours. That's my long run. I can do that. So what I started doing then was adding the day before. So that would be Sunday. So then adding Saturday and start building. So I was running 2 5-hour runs back to back. That was running on tired legs. And so, you just keep doing that. And you really don't, you do for 100-mile, you do have to add a couple of miles more to your other runs because you really want to run fatigued. That's sort of the way, feel what you're doing. That's the goal. And so I probably did what, 3 weekends in a row of 5 hours, 26 miles
Oh
on each
my.
day. Yeah.
Wow.
How long does it take to run 100 miles, roughly?
Well, I can tell you exactly how long it took me. 28 hours, 32 minutes, and 57 seconds.
Oh my
That is
goodness.
Holy smokes.
out of all of the races I have done, that is the only time I know. I will
That would be
never.
hard for me to even stay awake, let
Well,
alone run it.
Well, the thing, it's the goal. It's the goal. And you
I
just got to
see.
stay focused and, you just get it done, get it done. And that was sort of my attitude. And I hooked up with a group of people in that first quarter mile and we stayed together. People would come and go, but, we stayed together until the end. And
Wow.
you keep each other awake and and you really don't notice it. And as the sun comes up the next morning and you realize you've been running a whole day, but the sun comes up and it's like it's a new day. You get a burst of energy as if you hadn't been running all night long.
Wow.
Well, that's impressive.
So I just like to see what I can do, and that's what running is for me, is seeing what I'm capable of. Can I run 100 miles? Well, let's give it a try and see. And the confidence I get from running and accomplishing those goals just allows me to try other things.
Is that what keeps you running? What about running makes you enjoy it?
It's just I feel so free. I feel so alive. And it's just I don't know. It's just the best feeling. And there are times when I'm running that I just get this rush of yes, this is what I love. Yeah, I really do. I feel like it gets renewed. That it's like recommitting. I call it recommitting. I made the right decision, but it's still enjoyable. And I've had injuries, nothing major, and actually only 3 injuries in 19 years that stopped me from running, and they were strains. Nothing was broken, nothing fractured, nothing torn, but strains that I just could not run 3 different times for 6 weeks. But aside from that, every week there has not been a week that I didn't at least run once. I mean that just doesn't happen.
So you took up running in your mid-50s and convinced yourself you could do it. And in your introduction, we said you're a retired psychologist. So I think you might have some insight on how can we embrace new things like running as we age?
Well, you just have to give it a chance. It's like, I think that if you do I wonder if I could run. There was a woman at the New York City half this weekend who was 79 years old, and she ran her first half.
Oh, my.
She started running a little over a year ago. More and more older women are getting into running. And I think it's part of that. Well, I wonder if I could do that. Let's try. And you start, you maybe walk a block, run a block, whatever, and just see where it goes.
Wow.
That's cool.
So it's like, that's the guts. You gotta, but you're resilient. You've been through harder stuff. I mean, come on. It's not like you have to have a guarantee that this is going to be what you want to do or that you can be successful at it or, whatever. You can try and you may not like it. Not everybody likes running, even the people who can do it, but you will have found out something about yourself in the process. So it's still a win.
It is true that you don't get into your 50s without having learned that you can try things and not like them.
Right. And that you could fail.
By the time you're in your 50s, you have learned you might not be good at everything.
Yeah, I mean, talk about falling flat on your face in public, but that's within, once you get over that, it's like, yeah, what's the worst that can happen? I could fall again,
Right.
It's like, but I got up, so, it couldn't have been that bad.
So the other thing we said in your intro was that your two passions are running and travel. How do you manage to combine them, and what races in the world have you run?
Oh God, I have literally run all over the world.
Wow.
That's been the blessing of this whole thing. My first overseas marathon was the Great Wall of China.
Oh, my.
Yeah,
What?
I ran my first marathon, the Chicago Marathon, in October of 2008.
Your first marathon was the Chicago Marathon?
Yeah, the Chicago Marathon. It was going to be the Disney World Marathon in January of 2009, but that was the year that Obama was running for president, and I was a member of the Runners for Obama group, and they decided to do Chicago as fundraiser. And so, of course, even though I had Disney, and this is my first marathon, but it kind of I was kind of getting anxious about Disney. So, okay, I'll run, I'll run the Chicago Marathon. And then if I don't like it, I'll cancel Disney. But anyway, I ran the Chicago Marathon and I just felt so good. And I crashed like, because went from the race to the plane to home and then driving down from Hartford to New Haven. So I got way past, or it seemed late. And I think I fell asleep in my clothes. The next morning I woke up and I turned over and I was so stiff. And it's like, did I actually run a marathon yesterday? I mean, it was really, I was like, did I really? And I turned over again and it hurt so bad. And it was like, I did it. I really did it. I ran the Chicago Marathon. So, the next day I was talking to a friend of mine who had told me she used to run and she'd gotten some injury, that she had run the Venice Marathon. And so I emailed her and said, how did you find out about Venice? She said Marathon Tours. So I looked them up and they had their calendar of race vacations. And on there was the Great Wall of China, and it was going to be in May. It was like the Great Wall. I could run on the Great Wall of China.
Oh, my.
So I signed up for it. So that was my third marathon. I signed up for it after my first. And if I had known how hard that marathon was going to be, but there's good things you don't know those things. You sign up, so then you got to do it. And in between, I still did the Disney World Marathon, so.
Amazing.
And so I have been, next week, or not next week, next month, I'm going to do a half in Ibiza. I have never been there and I wanted to go, but I have run in Iceland, 3 or 4 of the Canadian provinces, England, Germany, Sweden, Italy, Spain, France, Germany. Did I say Germany? Those Caribbean islands, all of those, Hawaii, Alaska,
Oh,
most
my.
of the state, Patagonia, Brazil.
Oh, you ran in Patagonia. Wow.
They're right there at the tip, all the way down, Tierra del Fuego, the Patagonia Marathon.
Wow.
Amazing.
They have marathons all over the world, literally all over the world. So, you pick a place you want to go.
So do you do so what was the name of the organization? It was
Marathon tours and travel.
okay, do you do a lot do you still use them? Is that where you find these
No, sometimes, if there's a special trip, particularly if it's a hard one to get into, because, they give tour operators a bunch of tickets. So I use them for that. But most of them, I can do myself now because, like, for Ibiza, you register for the race. What is the recommended hotel? And you're set. You'll figure out what else you want to do and stuff
do
like
you
that.
normally hang out for a while either before or after?
Yeah. Usually, I mean, if it's local, it'll be a weekend, but like this, it'll be a week. But because, I like to go more than one place, I usually don't spend more than a week in any place. Sometimes it's usually like about 4 days.
That's nice.
Is there a particular race that's your favorite? I mean, is there one that you like to do more than once?
Yeah. The New York City Marathon.
Yeah. And tell me about that one.
It's everything. I mean, it's people from all over the world. It's the race everybody wants to run all over the world. They come and everybody's got a story. There's some, people struggling with things, trying to see if they can do whatever. All of those, everybody's driven by, there's some reason we're doing this. What's your reason? And everybody is so helpful and friendly. And then the crowds. I mean, you are literally a rock star for a day. I mean, and particularly if you put your name on your shirt. I mean, they scream. I mean, they scream and they're invested, and it's like showtime. It starts out with Frank Sinatra singing "New York, New York." I mean,
Wow. Yeah.
and it's past all of the sights and the icons, but it's just it's a challenging marathon, but it's just so, and that is it, the sense of accomplishment that you persevere and go through all that to get to the finish.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
crowds definitely help. The crowds definitely help.
That race goes through all 5 boroughs.
All 5 boroughs, yes. It starts in Staten Island, goes to Brooklyn, goes to Queens, goes to the Bronx, then down to Manhattan, then back. I don't know, it's some kind of
Yeah.
way, but they get it all.
Wow.
Ending
Okay.
in Central Park. Ending in Central Park. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my favorite. And this year will be my 9th. It hasn't been consecutive times. The last 4 have been consecutive, but it'll be my 9th. 3 of them I ran as an Achilles guide, and that's running with a disabled athlete. And then the other 6 are mine that I did on my own. So then that's the one I want to do every year from now on. It's such a, and it never gets old. It's always the same, but it's always different. It's great.
That's great.
Is there a race that you never wanna do again?
The Great Wall.
That was hard, huh?
It was so hard. First of all, you're actually only on the Great Wall for 3.5 miles at the beginning and 3.5 miles at the end. But in those 3.5 miles, you are climbing I mean, just like, oh my God. And the steps are not uniform in any kind of way.
Oh.
They can be I think that was somebody said that, that was the Chinese to sort of slow the enemy down even more, is confuse them with the steps. Some are like maybe 2 inches high. Then there are others where they were so tall, I could not reach my leg. I had to, get and throw myself up on the steps, but they go so high. But the views, 360-degree views of just, and you think you're on the Great Wall of China. So, and then when you come off the wall, very few people get injured on the wall, but when you come off the wall, you're like in a goat path thing. and you run through these villages, and a lot of people will twist their ankle or something on that. But you run through these little tiny villages that are on nobody's tourist guide. And the people are so thrilled. It's like the big event of the year. They throw rose petals, flowers, stuff at you, and everybody's cheering you on. But it's really, really, really hard, and it's really hot, and the air quality is not the best.
Oh, right. I'd forgotten about that. Yeah. Yeah.
China.
Yeah. China. Yeah. Yeah. So one of the nice things about runners, I think, is that it's usually a pretty welcoming community. Do you run with a running club, or do you have a group of runners? Do you have friends, family, anyone who also runs?
Well, personally, I'm a solitary runner. So, my training runs and that I do by myself, but I love races. That's my thing. And whenever there's a race, there's a gathering of people. Everybody's there for the same thing. And you can meet up with friends. Let's like this past weekend for the New York City half. Got to see so many people because everybody comes in for that race. But it's also part of being a community. No matter you go to a race, you're a runner. So you're part of the running community for that weekend or whatever. So you have a place to start from wherever you go in a new town for a race.
So, how does running help you with aging? I mean, how do we learn to deal with our changing bodies as we age? And can you talk to that a little bit?
Well, what I think that I have to allow a lot more time for the stretching. I guess this would all go under recovery. Stretching, mobility training, yoga, foam rolling, those kinds of things. I'd spend a lot of time each day doing those things just to keep, the muscles and joints loose and working. Because it seems like things can lock up pretty quickly. So it's very important for me to do those things a couple times a day. The other things is nutrition is much more important to me than it was. Whole grains, more like less processed food, more fresh fruits and vegetables, and rest. Rest is so much more important, I think, as we age. And, menopause can kind of disrupt the sleep cycle. But, that's one thing I think about working out hard too, is it kind of knocks you out at night, which
Yeah.
is good. But yeah, it's really important to get the rest, the nutrition, and all of the recovery tools in addition to whatever, if you're running, strength training, swimming, biking, whatever it is. But it really is about being gentle with yourself while you're asking your body to do some pretty challenging things.
So that's what you do. That's how you avoid injury.
Right, right.
You do some sort of cross training on a schedule?
Well, like one day a week I row, one day a week I bike, a stationary bike, and then I do strength training. And I think that is particularly important for women to combat osteoporosis and osteopenia, and for confidence, and I mean lifting heavy. Everybody's encouraging women to lift heavier now, and I think it really does make a difference. So yeah, weight training 3 to 4 days a week. And then one day completely off. On that one day that's completely off is when I do a yoga class or a stretch, something. I'm not even on my off days, like I'm not gonna do nothing, but it would just be a stretch. No,
So you run on Wednesday, Saturday,
Saturday, Sunday, and
Sunday, and
Monday.
Monday. So
Yeah.
what days do you strength train and bike ride?
I
Like,
I
do you have a
do
schedule?
Tuesday mornings I row and I strength train. Monday I do a mix of like running and bar. I do that with a friend, running and bar or Pilates, something like that. So,
Okay.
but in terms of lifting weights, it's more often Tuesday, Wednesday, and Saturday that
Okay.
I lift weights. I lift 3 days a week.
So you're doing that the same days, at least some of the time that you're also running.
Yeah, and that's also good to do the hard things together as opposed to run one day and then do heavy lifting the next. That they recommend doing them on the same day. And so Friday is my day off.
Okay. And on your day off, you still try to do stretching or yoga
Right.
or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
You're busy.
Yeah. Yeah. My days are full. My days are full. They are.
What advice would you give to any of our listeners on how to start running? How do you start running and not injure yourself when you're over
Well,
50?
that's you go very easy. And I would, if it's somebody who's never run before, I would start out walking. I would maybe walk, 3 days a week for a couple weeks, and then maybe try like a little bit like run a block, walk a block, run a block, but don't go all out running, but just go easy, run a block, walk a block, do that for 30 minutes and 3 times. And then you start building on that, maybe run 2 blocks, walk one until you get to the point. And that should be over weeks as opposed to, particularly as we're older, to introduce this to your body gradually. It should be over weeks that you would then be running for 30 minutes straight, and then you build on that.
So many of us like to, like, if we're doing something, it's like, oh, okay, I'm a runner, and I just go,
Right. And that's it. It has to happen now. I can't wait. But that is how we get injured. We ask our bodies to do too much too soon. And we don't listen when they first start screaming. Well, they have to get to the screaming level for us to listen, but they're telling us that we need to slow down. We're doing too much.
So is that sort of the advice you'd give us if we didn't want to take up running, but we wanted to start doing something else? I mean, do you have any advice on just making changes in your life?
Well, find something you're passionate about. Find something you're curious about. Like, getting back to, I wonder if I could, whatever that is for you, and then go for it. Once you figure out what it is, then go for it.
Do you think there's advantages? Like, what are the advantages of being a runner in your 70s?
Yeah, the confidence, I think I just love being outside. I love being in nature. I take a lot of pictures on my runs, stuff I never even paid attention to before, all those subtle changes. It's an experience for me to run. It's not just, let's go 3 miles.
It's not drudgery, it's a fun thing
Right.
for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's always something to see. There's somebody you see along the way, or, there's something. You just have to look for the good.
Do you just run in your neighborhood when you're training, or do you go somewhere?
I run from my door. Now I can go. Those 5 hour runs and those all are from my door. I don't drive to some place to run, And there's so much. I'm very fortunate. I live in New Haven. I don't know, where are you? Where are you guys?
We're in Ohio.
Oh, okay. Midwest. I'm originally from Michigan. I live in New Haven, and right, like literally 2 blocks from my house is East Rock Park, which is one of the most famous, I mean, just an amazing, huge park. It was designed by the guy who designed Central Park. So, it's just an amazing
Beautiful.
park. And then there's on the other side, there's West Rock, there's two ranges here. And then there's all of Yale and the Harvard. You can run anywhere. Really, you can run anywhere.
Yeah.
You don't. There's all those amenities like bike paths and that. But just running the streets, the city streets, is pretty cool.
Yeah. So you mentioned food. How do you eat in a particular way? You started to talk about that, but we didn't really cover it. And has how you eat changed as you've been a runner?
Well, first of all, I can eat a lot more than I did.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
And that, for somebody who likes to eat, I can eat a lot more. It was so interesting when I started running, I didn't think about weight. I just kept running. And then I started noticing that my clothes were getting looser. And it was like the weight just came off on its own. I didn't have to, as somebody who had followed every diet and everything, the weight just came off. And it's like apparently I found my what set point or whatever it is. But I'm the 3 egg omelet with the toast and hash browns, the most of a half of a baked chicken, those guys. But it's fresh vegetables like steamed or sautéed salads. And for the most part, the carbs are like sweet potatoes, those kinds of beans and rice is another thing that I like. So, and I try not to eat, I don't completely, but I try not to eat, like added sugar very much at all. And, fruits and vegetables, I mean, fruits, can give you that sweetness that you need.
So, if our listeners would like to follow you online, is there a place they can go to see you in your races? And
Yeah, Instagram,
okay,
and I'm ML Newell 12.
ML Newell 12.
Yeah.
We'll put a link to that in our show notes too, so that folks can follow you. That's great.
Well, thank you so much for being our guest today. It's been just wonderful talking with you. Very motivational.
I've enjoyed it. I can talk about running for forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
it is wonderful. Really inspiring to hear your story. Thank you so much, Mary.
My pleasure.
We'll talk again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Mary is amazing. All those races she's done, and she is still going strong.
I know, it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Think about deciding to run a 100-mile race to celebrate your 70th birthday. I find that I find that hard to even imagine.
Right. I remember turning, I think, 62 and deciding to ride 62 miles on my bicycle, and that was a challenge. It's like, I think when I turn 70, I will probably walk for 70 minutes. No, I don't know. It's like, it's amazing. She really is an inspiration. And she started doing all this when she was 55. And before that, she was like a bookworm and really didn't like it. So it's really amazing how your whole perspective can change by just thinking, well, what if?
Yeah, and being open to trying something and then realizing you like it.
Right.
It's
Right.
easy to just really shut your brain down about liking things, I think.
Right, exactly. And, I think she made, when she was younger, the classic mistake that I do too, I still do this, is too much, too soon, too fast, too far. Oh, I got to go to the gym. I got to go to the gym every day and I got to stay for 2 hours, or, you know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
not just
I really liked her advice about starting slow with the running.
start
Like,
slow, baby steps.
walk
Yeah.
first, maybe walk and then run for a bit.
Yes.
But how important it is to let your body adjust to what you're asking it to do.
Yeah, and really listen to it before
Yeah.
it's screaming at you. Well,
Yeah.
it reminded me when she was talking about, it reminded me about what you do, is that couch to 5K. It's such a great way to start running if you're interested in doing that.
Yes. And you know what I realized when I first did the couch to 5K, I got, I don't know, halfway through it. And then it was like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. It took me a while to figure out, just because they do week 1, week 2, week 3, you can repeat a week.
True.
You could do week 1 for 2 weeks in a row before you try week 2
Right.
to slow it down and to give yourself a bit more time to adjust. Sometimes you forget that, like when you have that app, it's easy to sort of forget you're allowed to make decisions for yourself.
Well, when you're a rule follower, and you're given a training plan or something, you feel like, oh, this is what I have to do. Maybe not everyone thinks that way, but it is important to listen to your body and give yourself a break and start a little slower if that's what makes sense. I mean, my gosh, she's doing over 100 miles and she trains 4 days a week, running hours at a time.
Well, she is also doing strength training 3 days a week.
Right. She has quick recovery, I think.
Pilates or yoga or whatever. She's
kicking it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. And it's great about having that confidence, and in being strong, it does give you confidence, doesn't it?
Yes, I think it does. I think just you don't have to be the world's fastest runner, but being able to run or being able to lift things or whatever does give you some confidence. I think it makes you feel a lot better about yourself.
Yeah. I loved how, when you asked her about why do you do it or what is it great about running, I feel so free. I feel so alive. I feel renewed. I mean, I love hearing that because that's such a great feeling. I find it very inspirational listening to her.
Yes, I was really impressed by her. That's just an amazing thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, if you're listening, let Chris and me know if you have some thoughts on our talk with Mary and maybe about running at your age or how you train or anything else that we talked about today.
Yes, please let us know. We love to hear from you. You can leave us a message at becomingellie.com, and you can also find us as Becoming Ellie on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube, and LinkedIn.
Also, please consider joining our private Becoming Ellie Facebook group.
Yes, it was so good talking with you today, Jill. I'm looking forward to our next episode of the Fit Strong Women Over 50 podcast.
I am too. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.